And Drew, tell us who you are and what you do. So, Drew, tell us what's the best or the worst advice you ever got?
I have no audio or video.
Oh, that's fun. That's fun.
Even come right back.
Okay, you come back, leave, and come right back. Sometimes technical issues happen. So, Jason, what about you, buddy? What's the best or the worst advice that you ever got?
What's the best and worst? I think that the best advice, which I think is an interesting one, is, and I'm not so sure it's the best, but I think it was interesting. I'll say that. Never say thank you for payment when you get payment from a client. Because after all, they're hiring you for your service. And that's what you're providing. So there should not be a need to say thank you.
That's so interesting. So, Drew, do you hear us yet? Drew does not hear us yet. Okay. All right. So that's interesting. So, Jason.
Sorry, guys, I have nothing all of a sudden.
Huh.
Okay. It's okay.
You just keep talking. I'll keep popping in and out.
Okay. Cool. We can do that. So with that, never say thank you, because that's what they're expecting to do.
Yeah, I mean, you can say thank you. It's been great working with you. We think your team's amazing. And you could praise them and do all that stuff for everything else. But when they actually physically, pay you, there's no reason to say thank you. So so ever since I learned that, like 15 years ago, I've never since said thank you to anybody for paying me.
That's interesting. So even automated, you don't send if somebody pays the invoice, it doesn't say thank you for paying me?
No, it just says, we value your partnership and working with us and we're so excited that you're part of our team type of thing. And, but no, the word thank you never appears.
It sounds like you're saying thank you by accident then.
Yeah.
I'm back, by the way.
Yeah, you're back. And so cool. So for all of you tuning in here to the Sales Leadership Show today, I've got my pal Jason Kramer. He's a CRM guru with Cultivize, and Drew McLellan, who is the founder and CEO or president, or both, Drew?
I'm CEO, Danielle's president.
Okay, CEO of the Agency Management Institute, which is the best agency management institute. Probably the only one too. So, Drew, it's good to see you, Drew.
Thanks
it's good
to
to
trademark
see you,
law and copyright law. Yeah.
That's it, right? The only one and only AMI. So, coming to you live from Denver and live from right outside Philly, Jason. Is that right?
New York.
New York. That's right. New York. Yeah. That's right. New York. Yeah, it's been a little while. So cool. So today we're talking about the future and the current of what the heck is going on in institutes. So in marketing agencies. So Jason, what's going on in your agency, man? What's going on currently?
So for us, we're I think, a hybrid. Certainly the word agency can mean, typically a marketing agency, advertising agency. We're neither of those things. Really, we consider ourselves more of a consultancy to help businesses, streamline their sales process and take the companies that Drew works with, right? All these marketing agencies that are generating leads often stop and they don't actually nurture the leads for their clients, right? And that's kind of where we come in to help complement that. But I think the big shift for us, and this is kind of like an odd thing to say, but we're working a lot more with international clients, than we ever have the last couple of years. And what I found really fascinating is there might be some email exchange, but often it kind of goes radio silence. And when you pick up the phone and you call an international company, like we just called this morning a potential client in Israel, it was like it was only a 10-minute conversation, but we got so much out of that 10-minute conversation and a meeting booked. And I think, and I don't know, Drew, if you have experience with this, I think it's almost, they don't think that a US-based company is going to call them. Like they're just only going to communicate via email. So I think when you call, especially on like even that first call, it's like, oh, this is refreshing, and you're a real person. And I'm willing now to talk to you and build that relationship.
Yeah, I mean, it's all about trust, right? And the more proximity we have, the quicker it is to read both body language and verbal and non-communication or non-verbal cues. And so it makes sense that email feels more arm's length than even a Zoom call or, picking up the phone, even if it's just voice only, which sounds very old school these days.
Yeah. Which, and it was interesting because the strategic partner I was dealing with, who's really more of like a referral to hand off to this company based in Israel, he's like, oh, I would have never thought of that. And like, while we were talking about something else, he's like, oh, let me call her on WhatsApp right now. And I was on the phone, and within 5 minutes, we booked the call for next week for him. And I was like, see, I was like, you were like so hesitant about calling her. And I was like, and you just got the meeting, So yeah, I think it's refreshing for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. So why do we think that is though, guys? I mean, the phone call is the oldest school method in the book, other than actually walking up and knocking on people's doors. So Drew, why do you think people aren't picking up the phone? Is that a generational thing? You think it's people are worried about interrupting, all the above, something else?
I think it's a mix. I think it is generational. I think people under 30 are not really sure the thing that they carry in their pocket actually works like a phone, right? It's just a little computer. And I think it feels invasive now today, which is interesting. I mean, that it's certainly, when we were all younger or kids, picking up the phone and calling your buddy or calling somebody to see if they wanted to play ball or whatever, that was normal. But now that's not how it works. We send a text or, we send an email. And so I do think it feels more intimate, and maybe somehow culturally we've translated that to invasive. And I also think a lot of people don't answer their phone. So, when you think about it, we assume when we're picking up the phone to call someone, especially if they don't know we're calling, we don't have an appointment, that we're going to get their voicemail. So I think for a variety of reasons, people just sort of default to electronic communication, which I think is a huge opportunity for those who are willing to try and have a more intimate connection than shooting somebody an email.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's right on the money with that. Jason, what do you think that's what it is too? I mean, you said you called overseas, and there was no hesitancy there as far as on the other end.
So I think there's two different pieces to this. Right? So one is, right, and I know we'll move on to past the topic, but I think it's worth mentioning that there's the two pieces. The first piece is it a completely cold lead, like Drew, you mentioned, right? Are they even expecting the call? Do they know who you are? Versus somebody that, asked for more information on the website and now you're following up to them, right? So they at least know your name, but you haven't had that initial conversation. So there's two different avenues. I think they're both acceptable for a phone call. But the other piece, you mentioned voicemail, Drew. I think that a lot of times as a salesperson, you might be reluctant. Oh, it's first thing Monday morning, or it's early, or it's end of day on Friday. I can tell you some of the best calls I've had are like 8 o'clock in the morning, 8:30 in the morning before I even start my day, or at like 4 or 5 o'clock on a Friday. Because people don't want to, they're checking out by like 3 o'clock on a Friday. They're like done with work. They have to be there for another 2 hours. So they'll actually talk to a salesperson.
Yeah, you're right.
Because they don't really want to be working. So it's Friday afternoons sometimes are the best time to actually make a call, in my experience.
Yeah. As a sales trainer, I can tell you that definitely the goal is to be as unexpected as possible without being intrusive, right? Yeah. And by that, I mean, to your point, afternoon on a Friday, great time. First thing Monday morning when they're getting started. Could be even on a weekend on a cell phone when they're out golfing or whatever they're doing. So I think that's interesting. And I think the future lies in a lot more one-to-one communication. And we have to get past the fact that it's just going to be digital, and we have to try some other methods. So I think that's interesting. So Drew, with that, you work with a ton of agencies. Yeah. What is happening this year that is maybe surprising to you, or that maybe confirms some things that you knew at the beginning of the year?
It's been 23 was a bumpy year for a lot of shops. And we work with any kind of agency you might imagine. So web dev, PPC, SEO, PR, marketing, CRM folks, people who just do HubSpot. I mean, there's a lot of ways agencies define themselves these days. Mm-hmm. But it was a difficult new business year. So I think the economy was questionable. People were rolling into an election year, so people are anxious. There were a lot of reasons, economic reasons on the outside of why people were worried and concerned. And so that trickles down to agencies. So number one, we're seeing an influx of opportunity in the first quarter for agencies that we hadn't seen in 23. So that's good news. Obviously the buzz talk of AI is permeating through agencies. Agencies are trying to figure out how to talk to clients about it, how to help clients understand what it can and can't do for their business. Smart agency owners are also looking internally to figure out, are there tools out there that'll help me run my business more effectively and efficiently? It's not just about, throwing something into ChatGPT and out comes a blog post. And then I think the other big thing is agencies we're far enough past COVID and the Great Resignation that agencies are feeling really good about the team that they have. And so they're really investing a lot in retention of employees, professional development of employees, growth of people. In an agency, I don't care what kind of agency you are, your biggest and most expensive asset are the humans that you employ. And so people are kind of doubling down to invest in those folks for the future.
Oh, that's awesome. That's great to hear. So investing in the future for their team is a great option. So Jason, how are you investing in your team to help them grow, or are you pulling back?
It's actually more investment in marketing efforts. So, unlike what Drew said, and I'm sure there's, lots of companies of all different places in terms of growth or not having growth. We were up almost 40% last year, and so it'll probably be even higher this year. But what I attest that to is, yeah, we have the core team. We've more invested in finding the right people, and that are versus younger people, more established people. So they cost more to have as part of our team, but we bring in better resources. What I've invested more in is the inbound, right? So putting more, sticks in the fire strategically. So even we're doing the podcast today, right? So doing more podcasts and doing more other channels that are bringing in different avenues of traffic and listenership, right? So my whole philosophy, and I'm sure we all would agree, is education goes a long way. We don't believe in the hard sell. So, we've been producing content and even ramping that up over the last 2 years, and even more so this year. Just hired a new social media team to handle all of that for us, and even designers there. But the point is that you have to educate. And I think what I'm seeing in terms of the trend, just kind of going to that tail, is people are willing to absorb that information, I think, more now, and they're actually doing something about it. So it's not just, producing gated content and white papers and whatever videos, whatever you want to produce, but the people actually paying attention if the content is good. And if you're knowing who's engaging, that's a huge opportunity to engage with them, during that life cycle of their buying pattern that they have.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. So 2 ways to invest there, one in marketing, one in people. And then with that,
it's probably not an either or, right? It's probably about investing in both. Because if marketing works, your people have to be steady to take on the influx of work. And so,
well, right. Yeah, exactly. And I think that's where also people fall short too, right? They go out and sell, and then they don't have the infrastructure to implement. Right. And then what they promise, they can't deliver upon. And they may not see it that year, but by the time next year rolls around, they're going to see a big impact, negatively, because they weren't actually able to retain those new clients that they promised all these things they couldn't deliver on.
Yep.
So how do you balance that? How do you balance the need to educate with the need to market and the need then, I'm going to bring in new business, but yet I might not have the team for that? Drew, what do you think? How do we do that?
Well, I mean, I think you have to grow the team so that you have some capacity, so that you have to assume your marketing is going to be effective sooner or later, and you're going to get new opportunities. But growth of the team doesn't have to be expensive. I mean, you have senior people, you have the agency owners. They can do a lot of that teaching and mentoring. So it's not necessarily sending them off to a conference or there's nothing wrong with those things. But it doesn't have to be super expensive. It's really more about creating a culture where we are constantly trying to get better. And by the way, peer-to-peer learning and teaching is a great model. So the 3 of us could be peers at the same level in an organization. And that doesn't mean we all know the same things or we're as good at the same things. And so there's no reason why we can't learn from each other. And, so as the team continues to strengthen the muscle and get stronger and be able to carry more weight, hopefully the marketing is also paying off and you're bringing in more dollars, because sooner or later there's a capacity issue and you need to add new people. But if you've created a culture of growth and continual learning, then you add people in that have that philosophy, and, it's just sort of exponential. But all of that sounds super simple and easy, and none of it is super simple and easy when you're running a business and you have client issues and challenges, and your employees have life issues that take them out of the office, and all the things, distract them, and all the things that are real in running a business today.
Yeah. So no silver bullet, huh?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. And the other factor too, just to kind of maybe end this and we can move on to another topic, is the idea that you have to have processes in place, right? So to your point, Drew, about being able to scale, I've spoken to a lot of agencies, even been involved with them in the years past, where they're just so disorganized. I mean, even like something as simple as their billing, they start doing work without even sending an invoice, right? Because like they're just so discombobulated in their own process.
Yeah.
or their project management is all over the place as well. There's no centralized system to monitor things and to assign tasks and do very simple basic functions to make sure that they're being not only productive but also profitable. And I think that, and I'm curious of your kind of take on because you've worked with way more agencies than I have. I wonder how many agencies even know if they're profitable or not, right? They think they're busy, they're doing work, but are they making money on that work?
Yeah. So if they live in our ecosystem, they do know because we make them do the math. But to your point, in every agency, there are certain sizes, and, you've gone through a lot of growth, it sounds like, so you probably have experienced this. There are certain sizes that when you get to that size, the weight of the burden of that business breaks the systems and processes that got you to that size. And so now you have to reinvent system and process. You have to mature them because a 15-person agency is very different than a 30-person agency. So, if you've grown 40% and you're targeted to grow 50% or more this year, you're probably approaching or at or just got through one of those growth spurts, which forced you to kind of mature up your systems and processes as the work changes, as the team gets more layered. It's easy when you have 5 people and everybody's horizontal and nobody reports to anybody. It's easy for everything to stay in everybody's head, and you don't need a good project management system. And, but you get to 10, 15 people and that doesn't work anymore. Now everybody doesn't know what everybody else is doing. And so there are just moments that happens. And to your point, the most dangerous thing to do, of course, is to grow without paying attention to your infrastructure and the way you get work done, because that's how you do become unprofitable. And eventually clients go away because you're not as sophisticated as they need you to be. And a lot of times then you slide back to that smaller size. So it's really important to sort of manage the way we work in conjunction with the size of the agency and the roles that you have inside the shop.
Right. Or you do the very unconventional thing that I did, where even when we were like 2 people, I was running the business like we were a team of 50. We had more processes and more software and things in place that, even probably a 75-person agency wouldn't have, because I'm just a process-oriented person. And I built all those systems so that, as we grew, we weren't catching up to ourselves. We were already ahead of ourselves in terms of the tech stack and the processes that we followed.
Yeah,
which is very rare. I don't think most people do that. I'm just kind of like, very, sort of, I don't know, like anal retentive that way to want to have things organized.
Yeah. Most agency owners aren't wired that way, right? They're visionary, they're creatives, and typically when you're a small shop, you're in the work, you're doing the day-to-day work because there's only 3 of you or 5 of you or 10 of you. So the fact that you're wired to be systems and process oriented, your brain's a little different than the average agency owner. And so you probably set yourself up for early success by leaning into what gives you comfort in terms of a business owner. So somebody else, it might be about award-winning creative, but for you, it was about functionality of the business, which is, I'm sure, served you well as you've grown.
Yeah. I mean, listen, you're absolutely right. I mean, I've worked with enough creative people to know that not everybody has the left side and the right side brain,
right?
Even in balance or even an 80-20 split, sometimes it's all creative. So it's interesting insights.
Yeah. Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. So let's talk a little bit about tech. Let's talk about AI and what that's doing to the business, because that is the hot word. So Drew, how are you seeing folks in your agency world? How are they using AI? Are they just using ChatGPT and maybe a little DALL-E, or what are they doing? Anything?
No. Very few agencies aren't dabbling in it, for sure. So some agencies are sort of experimenting with it, but most agencies have adopted a fistful of tools that they are using to serve clients, and a fistful of tools. And let's be honest, we've all been using AI for a long time. We just didn't talk about it this way. Yeah. So in some cases, this is business as usual. You use tools that help you automate processes and do things differently, more efficient, more effectively. And we're still seeing that. But we are seeing agencies be more intentional about exploring with some of the different tools and really thinking about how the tools serve clients, but also how the tools serve the operational side of the business. And so they're using it to screen job candidates. They're using it to automate accounting functions. They're using it. So we have one agency who, is using AI tools. They needed to do a photo shoot where they were putting a piece of jewelry underwater, like in the ocean underwater. So they did the photo shoot of the jewelry, and then they used different tools to basically artificially create underwater environments, which
Cool.
would have cost them an arm and a leg to shoot, right?
Mhm.
But if you looked at it, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference. And then they took the photograph of the jewelry and put it into that background, right? And so we're seeing a lot of really creative use of it, and we're just scratching the surface. I mean, the tools are changing every day, so they're going to keep getting different and better. And B, a lot of agencies are using them for data analytics and number crunching. So it's really impacting the business in a lot of different categories, and I feel like we're just starting.
Cool. That's cool to hear. So a lot of creative ways and a lot of number crunching ways that
Yeah.
are less creative, but just as important. That's
Yeah.
good. That's good. Jason, how are you guys using it in your agency?
So we're using it more for the higher level outlining of ideas, right? So fact gathering, research information. If we have an idea for a blog or for some social media content, using it to really just kind of see what else is out there. And I find that most, and I think kind of to what Drew's alluding to, and I know we've talked before, even Phil, with other people on the show. There's a little bit of a standoffish, I think, approach about letting the AI control everything, right? So that's what the copywriters are for. That's what the creative directors are for, to come up with the ideas, come up with the vision. And yes, you can use it to your point of the whole jewelry shoot to supplement some pieces that might take a little bit longer, more expensive.
Right.
But I think that's what we're seeing. And it's not quite there, and who knows when it will be there to really emulate, my voice or your voice or anybody else's voice, and that's going to be a while. And plus, I think you could also see through it, especially a lot of like the video stuff that I've seen and tested. It's not really me, talking. It's just like my head and a fake mouth moving. It's like, it's not quite there yet, but I'm sure it will get to the point where it's going to get harder to detect what is AI-driven content versus human content. Eventually, at some point, it's I think it will get there.
And I don't know. I think there is an element of humanity that is going to be pretty hard for a machine to replicate. So, Phil, back to your earlier comment about it, there's going to be more one-to-one conversations and all of that. So I think one of the things it does is it does elevate the value of human-to-human interaction. So, Jason, you picking up the phone and calling becomes more valuable when you could have a bot of you make a phone call or whatever, right? So I think it will actually sweeten the opportunity for humans to do what they are intrinsically better at than any machine, which is all of the humanity part of the work we do. It's the connectivity, it's the passion, it's the curiosity around question asking. I'm not sure that we'll ever see a machine do that as well as we as humans do, but do I think it's going to help us be effective and efficient and do a lot of things that it takes us a long time to do because it's 12,000 numbers that we're trying to crunch at the same time? Yeah, I do. And
and that's where I would say. So like, the dialogue, the real-time dialogue, I don't think we'll get there, to your point. But I do think there is a potential fit where personalization is huge. Obviously, it's been huge for a decade or more. Even before that, right? Direct mail campaigns has got your name written in the sand. It looks like someone wrote it, right? And so that has transferred over to the digital world in terms of email marketing, customized websites that are catered to you with your content personalized for you. I think those types of things, given the right directive, could replace and improve what us humans are doing manually. So even me reaching out on LinkedIn, let's say, to somebody and saying, hey, I know you're in Seattle, I heard about this cool event and I know you love this particular band, I heard they're going to be in town, right? And me just saying, hey, like, here's a link if you didn't know about it, or hey, I'm going to be in there, local, do you want to meet up? That's something potentially AI could do, right? If you're given the whole template of what to look for and do things like that. And that sort of thing, I think, could save time and help scale things if done correctly.
Oh, no doubt about it. It's certainly going to help with some automation elements of it and maybe some initial outreach kind of efforts. But at the end of the day, whether it's sales or marketing or whatever it is, there is a human element that is sort of the magic sauce, I think. And so the good news is, everybody's like, am I going to lose my job? And will agencies even exist? Of course they're going to exist. And no, everyone is not going to lose their job. So will people's job change?
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
The whole Y2K thing, right? When everybody thought they were going to start the next day, it's like, right.
Yeah, things change though, right? That's the whole thing that we're looking at. We think about the editing that often has taken place in some blog posts. Well, Grammarly can do a lot of that already for you. But the creative piece of that and the way you make that flow and the way you create an analogy that nobody's ever heard of before, well, that's not something an AI can do. And maybe one day it can, but not for a long time, in my opinion. That's what I think anyway.
Grammarly is a great example. So we've all used Grammarly forever. First of all, so nothing new. But B, I like to write with a lot of fragments. Grammarly does not like fragments. I, the human, get to override what Grammarly says and go, no, ignore that. No, ignore that. So again, it is the marrying of the two that has the power for all of us. And it's just really about being just like when the computers came. I mean, people used to work on typewriters, for the love of God, and we used to fax people things. We don't do that anymore. So
we don't?
I did send you a fax this morning, which, by the way, you answered.
I know.
Yeah. But, you think about it, it's really more about how we work, not whether or not we work, not whether or not we add value. It's just a new tool in the toolbox.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I'll get that fax after we're done.
So if I could Drew, you just said about toolbox, right? And so that made me think of one thing, which I've always wondered, and I think you'd be the best person to ask this question.
Oh, God.
Have you seen a shift on agencies, specifically like digital, marketing agencies, of finding new ways or interested in new ways to get their clients to not only be more sticky with them, but to be able to retain them longer? And, from my insights as an outsider, I think it's this trend where like, okay, every year, 2 years, let's evaluate what the agency's performance looks like. Are we able to quantify that they're actually bringing us, more revenue? Yeah. And if they aren't, or we can't quantify that, we're just going to move to the next agency. And it's like this vicious cycle, because if the agency doesn't have, the sales activity data and can't connect the dots, it's not that they're doing their job poorly. It's that the agencies or the clients doing the job poorly of not being able to pass the information back that's needed to show the value. And I was just curious if you've seen any shifts in the last couple of years or even this year with that.
I'm relieved to say I actually can't answer that question. So we do a couple things. Number one, we do some proprietary research every year where we talk to people who hire agencies. And one of the things that came out loud and clear over the last couple of years, and was really loud and clear in this last year, is agencies get fired for two main reasons. One, we're too slow. Our systems and processes are clunky. We're not nimble. We can't turn on a dime. And we all know that the way business is done today is not set it and forget it. It is dynamic. And so agencies have to be able to move at the speed of business, which is challenging for some of them if they haven't sort of built systems and processes around it. And one of the reasons, Jason, why I suspect you grew in 23 when so many agencies didn't, is you answer the second concern that clients have, which is, I give you $1, show me exactly what I got for my dollar. Did I get $2 of leads? Did I get $3 in sales? Did I get increased web traffic? And were they on the right pages for the right amount of time? And, some marketing lends itself better to that kind of accountability than others. And to your point, sometimes no matter what the agency does, if the client doesn't share the data, or you can't sort of knit the pieces together between sales and marketing, no agency can really prove their worth. CMOs are under a lot of pressure to demonstrate to the C-suite or the board or whoever is their governing body that they're spending the money wisely and well. And so this idea of attribution and accountability and proof points of how the marketing spend is delivering against business KPIs, not marketing KPIs like clicks and all that kind of crap, but true business KPIs. If we can't do that, we're not going to keep that client.
And do you find that they're bringing in technology? Like, are they starting to be, let's say, selling HubSpot or other CRMs and realizing they're going to need to be involved in that? Or do you see a trend where they're trying to partner with other companies that have that expertise and bring them in as a white label partner to say, okay, we're going to help you with that second piece of the funnel to connect the dots between sales and marketing?
Both. So some agencies are adopting technologies. They're building first of all, they're stepping over the line. So, for a long time, agencies, there was this line between marketing and sales, and agencies, your comment earlier in this conversation, agencies didn't cross that line. Now more and more agencies are recognizing they need to step over that line, because they can drive all the leads they want. But if the salespeople suck, or no one answers the phone, or no one checks the form on the website and actually responds to people who ask for information, the marketing department or the marketing agency, if they don't have visibility into that and they can't influence it, it doesn't matter what they do. Right.
Yeah.
So some agencies are really literally stepping over the line, and they've got sales and enablement programs and all kinds of other things. And many others are doing what I suspect happens with you, is others are partnering with the agents. Really, they're partnering with a sales enablement agency to augment what their marketing is doing. And they're working together kind of hand in glove to figure out, okay, look at all the sales data. Who do we need to drive to the landing page or whatever? Great. We'll do that. And then you decide what happens on the landing page. How do we get them in front of a salesperson? You do the training of the salesperson, and together we will be able to demonstrate the ROI of our shared efforts, so neither of us get fired. So it's happening in both ways.
Wow, that's outstanding. And that's great news for a lot of people, because not stepping over means you think you absolve yourself of responsibility. What happens is you get fired.
Right.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. All right. Oh, go ahead, Jason.
No, I was going to say there's a great visual reference for those that are maybe, listening in, or even they're seeing our beautiful, handsome faces here. But is that, a lot of agencies, I remember one agency told me, he's like, we can, he used the baseball analogy. He's like, we can throw as many pitches as we need to, all day long. But if that client is never going to swing the bat and never try to hit a ball,
right?
What are we doing here? Like, what's the point? We might as well just quit the game now, And there's that frustration level, I think, where even maybe if they want to cross that line, it's like, well, how do we do that? There's an education piece internally, I think. Like, if your account managers aren't used to talking about the sales process and how to nurture a lead and what the pipeline looks like and how to build follow-up processes and all these other pieces, it's one thing to say, hey, we need to do it, but it might be even harder to actually implement, that solution.
Well, and a lot of times, I don't know if you find this, but a lot of times clients don't have the infrastructure in place that we assume they would have to be able to track where a lead comes from, or what sells when, or, they're looking at dollars, but they don't really have the sort of the detail level that we as agencies would need to be able to prove that the things we're doing are working. And so oftentimes agencies are having to say, okay, here's the data we need. And the client says, yeah, we don't know how to get that. And some agencies will just accept that. But other agencies are now saying, okay, well, then let's figure out a way that we can measure that together, that we can track that. So we had an agency, worked with a huge company that made, like bulldozers, like $1 million pieces of equipment, sold through a dealer network. And when they said to the client, okay, we're going to do all these things, and the clients goes, yep, all that looks great. They said, how are we going to know if it works? And they said, well, we'll know by sales, but we don't know how to track sales, and we can't tell you which dealers actually sold the things. And they were like, what are you talking about? They said, yeah, we don't have that data. So the agency kept pushing, and where they got to was the one piece of data that the company had were warranty cards. So you buy $1 million tractor, you still have to fill out a warranty card, either online or back then by hand, right? And then you mail it in. And so what the agency said was, great, send us all the warranty cards. We will throw those into a database. We will sort them by geography and by date, and we'll be able to tell you what sold where and for how much money. So this is an example of an agency that didn't take, we don't know how to do that for an answer, and figured out a very rudimentary, stupid way of getting the data they needed to keep the client.
Yeah.
Wow.
And there's even, it's a great example, and I'll just give you another one to piggyback off of that. So we just brought on a pretty successful family-run business, roofing company in New Hampshire. And so they've been around for, a couple of decades. And, as they're talking to me, they're like, hey, we do all these things. We do radio, we do, print, we do, we got QR codes on, or not QR codes, but we got lawn signs, we got door hangers, we do everything. We got trucks driving around. And I said, but how are you tracking to know how that's effective? Like, you cost spending a lot of money, tens of thousands of dollars a month on marketing. And he's like, I don't know. He's like, that's why I'm hiring you to figure that out. And so our simple solution is put a unique QR code on your lawn, the lawn signs, on one on the door hangers, one on direct mail, build separate landing pages. We'll be able to track how much traffic you're getting to those landing pages, and then the conversions. And he's like, "Oh, that's easy." I'm like, "Yeah, it's easy. It's not complicated." But what does the client do? He goes, prints more, yard signs and other things without the QR code. So I'm like, "What are you doing?"
They don't always listen.
Right?
Right?
I'm like, we gotta do these things in a methodical way to track things. We can't sort of retroactively go back and say, "Okay, what happened last month?" if the tracking wasn't in place.
Yeah.
So, but that's it's amazing to me, and I'll sort of, I know we're gonna wrap up here, but the one thing I think that we could all take away from this is that if you're listening and you're spending any money on marketing at all, whether it be like internally or through an agency, is just to kind of sit back and say, are we able to show that we're actually showing whether or not we're generating revenue? And is that revenue higher or lower than what we're spending on that marketing effort in that channel? And
that you have a responsibility. You can't just look to the agency and say, how are you going to improve this?
Right.
You have to participate in that process, right?
Yeah.
What I love about your QR code example is pre-COVID, that would have never worked, right? QR codes were gone. We were done. So this is a great example of technology kind of coming back. And sometimes we have to see it 2 or 3 times before it gets adopted. And so, when we talk about AI and all those things, it's all iterative and it's all cyclical. And so whatever is true today may not be true tomorrow, but that doesn't mean it won't be true a week from now.
Sure.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. Because at the end of the day, it's all about, I think the other myth, not myth, but the other misconception is you go to a trade show, you go to even a networking event, you're like, oh, I met 50 people. It's great. This was worth my time. And I know you do a ton of events, Drew, right? So I'm sure you have experience, and that could be another call we have. But I just want to add this, is that just because you got 50 leads doesn't mean that they're actually qualified and that they're even going to turn into a client. So it's really going back and saying, okay, like, let's look at that and what was the actual net result of that. And I think that's definitely where we shine, with our clients, is really focusing and drilling. And we are one of those agencies where we don't take no for an answer. It's like, if you don't have that tracking in place, we're not going to work with you until we can actually figure that out, because without that, we can't prove that we're bringing value to you, as the point you made earlier.
Right.
Yeah.
And Drew, I'm going to give you the last word. Jason got the last word there on tracking. So any last words on the future or even the now of how to make sure that you're demonstrating ROI and doing a better job marketing?
I think the end of the day, the future is exactly what it's always been, which is change is inevitable. You have to be a lifelong learner. You have to be able to flow with that change. You have to be open to doing the same thing you've been doing for a long time in a new and different way. But at the end of the day, it is about 2 things: the relationship and the value we bring to those relationships. And that is never going to change for anybody who is in the sales or marketing realm. That's what we actually sell, is the relationship and the partnership that we have with clients, and the fact that we're going to help our clients accomplish their goals. And the tools we use to do those will continue to evolve. But the underlying promise we make is pretty golden and pretty set in stone.
Awesome. Great stuff. Well, I'm going to take us out here. If you want more of Jason Kramer, that's Kramer with a K, go to cultivize.com, cultivize.com. And if you want more from Drew McLellan, go to agencymanagementinstitute.com. That's just like it sounds, agencymanagementinstitute.com. Thanks today, gents. I appreciate you both.